No, you don't need the.
I'm doing this my way.
He a legend, he a legend, he a legend. He a legend, he a legend, he a legend.
Talking on it though, then
He
you
a
can't put it up
legend.
later.
Welcome to the league, to the league, to the league, to the league, to the league of items. Welcome to the league, to the league, to the league, to the league, to the league of items.
Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Michael from League of Items, and today I figured I'd do something a little different. I need to get through this a little faster than normal, so I'm going to limit myself to 5 minutes per game. I should be able to hit all the important parts and get the betting information out there. So I've got the stopwatch on my screen. Hopefully that'll keep me honest. We're about to find out. So let's get started. 5 minutes per game by game breakdown, LPL and CBLOL. Let's do it. All right, first game, IG versus Top Esports. Invictus Gaming is the favorite in this matchup. They are a 67% favorite. I think that Invictus Gaming is the right side. Originally, I thought that I'd like Top Esports, but it looks like Top Esports is becoming more and more of a public side. They've been making people a lot of money on DraftKings, and I think that their playstyle makes them look a little bit better. Invictus Gaming has a tendency to play in these games that are extremely volatile, and players lose confidence when they're watching the games because they think like they don't know what they're doing. But I think they're more of a controlled chaos situation where they know that in order to get the objectives they need, they're just more comfortable fighting. So I don't think that it's a deficiency about how they play the game. I think if I was betting on this in real life, I would definitely want the Invictus Gaming side. Top Esports, I think they do have chances to win. If you told me tomorrow that Top Esports managed to win this 3-0, I wouldn't be completely surprised, but for betting, I think that I definitely prefer the Invictus Gaming side. For DraftKings, I think that the Shy has an advantage in the top lane. If I'm doing a four-person stack from Invictus Gaming or a 3-person stack, I would include him, or at least consider including him, and I would also run him out as a captain. I don't think that I'd run 369 as a captain, and you probably wouldn't need to because of salary. In the jungle, we have Leon versus Karsa. I think Karsa has the better side of this matchup for DraftKings. He's more highly correlated with his team when they do well. Leon is a little bit different of a jungler. He has a unique champion pool, and a couple of the champions that he plays are kind of detrimental to the team in the early game and for DraftKings scoring. So that does scare me a little bit, but I think overall I would definitely have some exposure to Leon if I was heavy on Invictus Gaming, which might actually be the contrarian option tonight. In the mid lane, Rookie versus Knight. Knight has been on fire recently. He has had huge performances on DraftKings, and the inclusion of Jackie Love in the roster has allowed them to take some of the pressure off of Knight in the early and mid game. This lets him scale really well into the late game in the team fights where he really knows how to play. I think from a DraftKings perspective, I do want exposure to Knight, but I think that it's going to be tough to have exposure to them if you're going to be on Invictus Gaming. I think Rookie, if we look back at this a couple of years from now and remember 2020 in esports, I think Rookie will probably still be the better player a couple of years down the road, unless Knight is just coming out of nowhere and is going to be great. But Rookie, he's a world champion. I think from experience, I think he is not a pushover in the mid lane by any means. I probably prefer Rookie in this spot. And then last, we have the bot lane. So we have Puff and Southwind versus Jackie Love and Yu Yanjia. So we got the rosters today, and those are the starters. I think that Top Esports definitely does have an advantage in the bot lane, but as I mentioned, every single team appears to focus in on Jackie Love because they don't want him to steamroll the game. He's a good player, but even when he was on Invictus Gaming's World Championship team, he wasn't the primary carry. So people who are just learning about esports through DraftKings are going to think to themselves, oh, Jackie Love won a world championship as the AD carry. He was probably the most important player on the team. But that wasn't the case. He was probably the third or fourth most important player on that world championship team. The Shy is really the best player from that team, and he's still on Invictus Gaming. So I do prefer the Invictus Gaming side. I do want Puff, and I think that Jackie Love is probably going to be very highly owned today because everyone has seen recently that he can put up big numbers. So my favorite stack from this game is probably a three-player stack. I think that FPX is my favorite side overall, but I would want exposure to the Shy. I don't really want exposure to Leon. And then if I was only picking 3 players from this, I'd probably go with the bot lane. For top esports, if I was going to put together a stack for them, I think I'd want exposure to Knight first, as well as the bot lane. They definitely have the chance to win, but I think this is going to be the closer series. So if I had to put a bet on this at minus 204, I don't think that there's any edge there. Like I said, originally I wanted top esports to win. I thought that it would be the sneaky side, but all the sneakiness is gone after they beat FPX 2-0. So I guess the last piece of advice for this would be FPX and top esports will probably be the most common combination of teams. So if you get exposure to Invictus Gaming, you will be slightly more contrarian than I think most people would imagine. Because normally the two favorites will not be a sneaky play. But FPX and IG does make a lot of sense to me. All right. So that was almost the full 5 minutes. So let's do that again. All right, next up we have JDG and FPX. The betting line for this game is Fun Plus Phoenix minus 133, JDG plus 102. I love FPX here. I think that the sportsbook is really not giving enough credit to how good FPX is. I know that they weren't expected to drop a map to EDG, and they did that today, but it's really not a big deal. Over a 5-game series, I think FPX wins this at least 60% of the time, so you are getting good value if you decide to put your money on FPX outright. I think when I was talking to DFS Bachelor today on his channel, we mentioned maybe look for an alternative line or look for a live betting opportunity where after the first game, if FPX does actually lose the first game, I would feel very comfortable putting a bet on FPX to win the series anyways, because they're just a better team. In terms of DraftKings, one thing that you have to be afraid of is the Gimgoon and Khan situation. Gimgoon is the starter, but if they lose 1 or 2 games, I could see them theoretically going to Khan just to switch things up. Zoom has been playing really well since he came back for JDG, and that's really changed how their team performs. They're like the Dumpling Brothers or whatever. So Zoom and Kanavi, great synergy supposedly, but you haven't really seen them destroy the good teams consistently. So I think that they are not being correctly priced by the sportsbook because we've seen them perform well recently, and I don't know if that continues against FPX. I think FPX, in order for them to win this series, they are going to put a lot of pressure on the jungle. Kanavi is a young jungler, and he is a carry jungler. When carry junglers get put behind, they have a lot of trouble staying relevant in the game. I haven't seen anything from Kanavi that tells me he can't play from behind, but I just know that it's not his preferred way of playing. So it's going to be the focus of FPX, I would assume. So either they're going to ban out a bunch of carry champions, or they're going to get do and be on champions that can help invade him in his jungle and limit his upside. Because if FPX limits Kanavi, I think that they easily win this matchup. Kanavi is the highest priced jungler on this slate, but I think everyone who plays JDG will want exposure to Kanavi. They will probably be the lowest owned team because FPX is probably higher valued by DraftKings players than the sportsbook for some reason. So it's an interesting ownership spot. I haven't put in too much thought into the actual ownership of these games, but I would assume JDG is the lowest owned team. Kanavi is probably going to be the highest owned player, though, from that team. In the mid lane, this is the biggest mismatch in this game. So Duanbi versus Yagao. Duanbi plays a ton of different champions. Whatever is best for his team, he can play. So I think that we're going to get good matchups for Duanbi, even if he's blind picking. He showed off a Ryze today. If he plays Ryze a few times in this matchup on Monday, it's going to significantly limit the upside that FPX has from a DraftKings perspective, because that includes a new way to win the game. So when you're playing Ryze, you can split push and kind of make the enemy team focus on 2 separate waves at the same time, or 2 separate objectives at the same time. This is a great way to exploit teams like JDG that want to group up and fight you head on. So that's just another thing that I'm kind of afraid of in terms of DraftKings scoring. But I do like Duanbi a lot. I think that he has great upside, and he's really the most important player from the team. It's similar to T1. He's not necessarily going to carry every game, but he is normally the reason why his team wins. In the bot lane, we have LWX and Crisp against Loken and Lumao. I think that the bot lane advantage is definitely with FPX. They won the World Championship last year, and even though Duanbi was really the main player that kind of led them to that victory in Worlds last year, LWX played fine. Well, better than fine. so I think we have top lane's probably 50-50. Jungle's probably 50-50, and I think the public likes Kanavi more than Tian. Mid lane is heavy favored in FPX's direction, and then in the bot lane, I think we also have an advantage to FPX. If I was going to get exposure to FPX, it's going to be tough to stack them with top esports, but in terms of the order I want to get players into my lineup, I want Doinby first, LWX second. Crisp is a good one, and I think the team is also a good spot because there is a big upside in terms of the game not played bonus. I think that the other series is closer, and we're always looking for the games not played bonuses for our supports and the team slot. So you definitely want to get exposure to both of those. If I was running JDG, all the normal plays are available. It just depends on what you get from Invictus Gaming. All right, this is going to be a little bit more difficult. We're going to Brazil. I don't watch a ton of Brazilian matches, but I have won a couple $1,000s on it a few weeks ago when I came in first, I think, in one of these contests. So the first matchup is Prodigy Gaming versus Redemption. The line for this game is Prodigy minus 265, Redemption plus 190. I'm pretty sure that Redemption gives up a decent amount of points. Their AD carry Patrick has performed well in the past. And I think that's the player that I won money with. So if I'm looking at this lane by lane, it's going to be tough to pick these out based off of lane matchups because I'm not very familiar with these teams. But if you have an underdog getting an upset, then you're going to want exposure to the mid laner and AD carry. An important thing to remember for Brazil is that they play best of one series. So it's more similar to EU Masters, LEC, and LCS. If there is one game that goes insane, then you're going to want exposure in terms of a game stack. Brazil is notorious, well, not notorious, but they're extremely bloody. They fight all the time, and some of the kill scores get out of control. You'll see a lot of games where it's like 22 kills to 14 or something like that. So even if you draft a losing team, you're not necessarily dead, depending on how their salary is lined up. So if I was going to get exposure, I do kind of like Redemption just from an underdog perspective. The winning lineup will probably be a big favorite with an underdog because of the way that the salaries line up. It gives you access to the AD carry as a captain or a mid laner as a captain. And that's always my favorite way to build lineups. If I was going to play Prodigy Gaming, honestly, maybe I wouldn't even play Prodigy Gaming. Prodigy Gaming doesn't seem to have the huge upside. That is kind of box score watching. And they have had a 37-point performance. So let's see. I think I do want Prodigy Gaming then. So Prodigy is 72%. Is a 72% favorite. That means that they will probably be in 70% of lineups. At least one player in 70% of lineups. If you want more information on that statistic specifically, make sure you check out Dark Sheep and I when we do a live stream later. We're going to try to break down ownership percentages a little bit better. But just for this, I think obviously Prodigy is the better side. They're 70% favorite, and I'm not sure about the betting market in Brazil. I don't know how sharp their lines are, but I would consider both sides. Let's see if we like any of these other games better. So we go to PNG and Furia. Young Sungwon, I recognize that name. Minerva, he actually played Morgana jungle the last time that I watched Brazil. That was actually really cool. Tinones, I recognize that name as well. BRTT, he's one of the most popular Brazilian players in the world. One of the most popular Brazilian players worldwide. He's like one of the original big Brazilian players. And he's been to Worlds a couple of times. So PNG, I do remember one thing about PNG is that they're much more macro focused and they're more intent on winning the game than getting a lot of kills, which means they're not. They don't need to play 4 kills to win. So that does kind of scare me a little bit. If I was comparing it to a team from the North American Championship Series, I'd say they're kind of like TSM because they are willing to win a game with like 10 kills, but then sometimes when they're playing against a bad team, they'll get into very high kill score games because they play the early game wrong. So PNG is the better team. It's minus 140 to plus 100. I'm not sure what the standings are. Let's see if we can get that pretty fast. So I just looked up the standings. Furia and Pain Gaming are tied in the standings, but I think that the money line suggests that the public money would be on Pain Gaming because obviously they have one of the most popular players in the world. They're both 10 and 10, so that does change how the fantasy scoring goes. I think that I would prefer PNG because I have seen Furia pick up something crazy like Morgana Jungle, so they're the team that's more willing to take risks, and sometimes those risks can blow up in your face. So I don't think I'm going to want either side in this matchup just because I remember the different win conditions that Pain Gaming looks for, and they seem to have lower upside when they win than other teams. I don't know if Sports Projections is going to put out a chart for this, but if he does, I'd be interested to see if that lines up with how I view things. Next up, we have Vivo Keed against Kaboom. So we have the number 1 team against another team that's tied for 3rd place. Vivo Keed, when I did my original projections for Brazil a couple weeks ago for the first slate, Vivo Keed was showing up as the highest kill score team. Them and Flamengo. They seem to be the two teams that score the most kills. Vivo Keed is a 65% favorite over Kaboom. Kaboom has made it to Worlds in the past, so they're definitely not a pushover team. Parang seems familiar. Kaboom, there is some danger with their AD carry. I'm not sure which one is starting. I know that last time there was a Brazilian slate, that information was out there, but most people overlooked it, and the person who ended up taking down the tournament, I think, had Duds the Boy. So people who played the last slate are going to see Kaboom, see that they're at a discount, and probably want to play them. That would just make me want to play Vivo Keed even more. I think they're probably the first or second highest upside team on the slate. I would think of it as like a C9 situation. Typically in a league, you'll have more than one team that scores a lot of kills. That's a good team. But for now, in the North American Championship Series, you only have really C9 as the consistent scoring a lot of kills team. So I think I'd compare Vivo Keed and Flamengo to C9 in terms of play style, not necessarily in terms of talent. So Vivo Keed is another team that I'll probably want to have exposure to on this slate if I decide to play it. Grell has had some big games. Yeah, Grell is like one of their biggest carries. So he has a game with 54 points and 42.76 points. That's very interesting. I'm not sure why the mid laner seems to be less involved in these games. But that just means you definitely want Grell, you definitely want Klaus, and you definitely want Professor. Professor actually had a couple of huge games as well. I remember watching the highlights from one of those games. So you could even get different with this stack. You could do something like jungle, AD carry, support, and team. And the reason why you would do this is to get 3 players from another potentially higher scoring team, but locking in the upside of Vivo Keed's team. So that you can pivot back and forth if you need salary, because you're not going to put in a team that you don't think has a chance to win. Last up, we have Flamengo and INTZ. Flamengo is minus 190. That's a 65% favorite. I think it's probably closer to 60. So it's probably 60-40 Flamengo versus INTZ. Flamengo is 12 and 8. INTZ is 8 and 12. So I guess that means they're one of the worst teams in their league. If we look at it by lane, Wolf against Tianxi, Ranger against Shinny, Goku and House, Macau and Absolute, Jojo at Redbert, and Flamengo and INTZ. So I think, based off of what I've seen in the data, I think that the fantasy points per game that you see on DraftKings doesn't give you the real picture about Flamengo esports. They are one of the highest average kill score teams, and the reason that their fantasy points per game looks like this is because in their game log they have 2 losses. but outside of that, they're a very good team. So I would say if I had to assume what players that look at the DraftKings contest are going to do, they're going to see INTZ and see these like higher scores down here and just assume that they're a good team, when in reality they're second to last. So I would definitely prefer Flamengo Esports. I don't know if they're called Flamengo Esports. Flamengo Esports. So I would definitely prefer this side. So if we're going back through, I think PRG versus RDP. I think RDP is actually a high upside underdog that we might want to get into our lineup. And then I love Vivo Keed and Flamengo. So if I was building the almost perfect lineup, I would want to get RDP, maybe some players from Furia, and then Vivo Keed and Flamengo. So I think, like I said earlier, Grell is one of the highest upside players in the league, regardless of position, just based off of what we've seen with DraftKings scoring. So let's start off with him as our captain. Then, in order to get correlated with him, let's get Klaus and the support. The way that this makes sense is like if they get into spots during the game where they're fighting around dragons and fighting around barons, if they're in position, Grell and Professor are going to be two of the players looking to engage the fight, and then Klaus is going to clean them up. I would want to look at champion pools a little bit closer to understand why Nosferus is not as high scoring as everyone else. So that's another leverage spot potentially, where if I see that he is playing the correct champions in terms of like high DraftKings scoring upside, then I would consider Nosferus as my captain as well. So I think Klaus is going to be the most popular captain from Vivo Keed, because as long as you have an underdog that you like, you can kind of pair those together, which is pretty easy. Otherwise, I think Nosferus and Grell, probably Grell before Nosferus even for captain spot. So players who want to get two favorites into their lineups are probably going to pivot to Grell if that's possible. Otherwise, they would probably drop all the way down to support because it's highly correlated with the rest of the team. So let's get one player from these three other teams. If I play anybody from RDP, it's going to be Crystal. So their mid laner and AD carry, in the games that they win, I'm pretty sure that the one game that I watched from them, both of those players had either 10 kills or 10 assists, which is a little bit more common in Brazil than in other leagues, just because of how often they like group as 5 and team fight each other. So let's go with, I'm going to call him Crystal, because I have no idea how to pronounce that. So Furia, if I'm getting one player from Furia, I think we're going to go with the potential Morgana jungle game. So like I said, PNG, if they're the ones dictating the pace of play, this could be a lower kill score game, and that does kind of scare me a little bit. It also scares me that if they're losing, they may just give away a lot of things, which is not great for DraftKings scoring. You want your losing team to continuously fight for objectives and like force the team to kill them off, literally. So in that matchup, if I was playing Furia or PNG, it'd probably be the Furia side. I don't think PNG has the same upside that Vivo Keed and Flamengo does. Obviously, any team can go out there and score 20 to 25 kills in a game, but throughout this season, we've seen Vivo Keed and Flamengo do it more often. So if you want a contrarian play, sure, maybe look for Pain Gaming. Otherwise, it seems unlikely to me. I'll leave it at that. And then last up, if we're looking towards Flamengo, I'm pretty sure that when I did my original research, they were like the highest scoring team. They had like 17 kills on average, which is pretty good considering Brazil is like relatively closely contested, which means like your fantasy points aren't going to look as good because you'll have like a game where you have 22 kills and then a game where you have 10 because you lost. So it looks like they all have good upside in their victories. Looks like they have a new support. So Jojo wasn't playing. This guy was on the first slate. So Ranger, I feel like Ranger is somebody that I recognize as well. So in their one victory, they had Wolf, scored 30 points. It's always scary to get a top laner, but that might actually be a good spot for us. So that is the almost perfect lineup for today. If I was going to put together a parlay for this slate, I think, well, let's go to China first. So if I was going to do a parlay in China, I think the easy way to go is Invictus Gaming plus FPX. I think Invictus Gaming, the money line is a little surprising to me. I thought that they would be lower favorites, but I'd probably do that. Invictus Gaming plus Fun plus Phoenix. If you want to bet on the map spread, I think that both of these games are going to go. Invictus Gaming plus Top Esports, I think, is going to be closer than JDG plus FPX. So if I can get FPX minus 1.5 maps, I would consider something like that, as long as the number was close to plus 200. I haven't looked at the line recently. Invictus Gaming, I would need to bet them money line, and I wouldn't bet that much money line at minus 200. That's why I'd want to get it into a parlay to kind of juice the odds a little bit. It is a little riskier, but I think FPX is definitely going to win that series, and their odds don't make any sense to me. Fun plus Phoenix at minus 135 just seems like a misprint. In terms of Brazil, I think that a couple of underdogs won today. So I would look to the favorites to kind of reestablish normalcy in Brazil. I would go with Flamengo. I think Flamengo is fine. That's a good one. Vivo Kid, I think, is almost guaranteed to win. Vivo Kid lost yesterday, and they're a good team. They've lost a few of their matches recently, but I don't think that's going to be like a long-term trend. I think that they're in first place for a reason. They do play a pretty interesting game style. Vivo Kid and Flamengo, the two most interesting teams in Brazil. That's all the time I got for you. Thanks for watching. You've witnessed the first lightning round, almost perfect lineup. I was going to do something a little different with like the draft, but like editing would have been a nightmare. And I just want to make sure that everybody has good information going into tonight when they're making their lineups for China and for Brazil tomorrow, if you're into that kind of thing. I think there will probably be a European Masters slate as well. So if you want to get my information for that, look out for a live stream tonight. Twitch.tv/The League of Items. Follow me on Twitter at League of Items. Follow my YouTube channel. And make sure that you just get in touch with me. If there's something that you want to see me do a video on, just let me know that there's interest in it, and I'll try to put together something for you. Otherwise, good luck out there. And once again, thanks for watching the almost perfect lineup.
No, you don't need the.
I'm doing this my way.
He a legend, he a legend, he a legend. He a legend, he a legend, he a legend.
Fucking on it though. Then
He a
you can't put
legend.
it up later.
Welcome to the league, to the league, to the league, to the league, to the league of items. Welcome to the league, to the league, to the league, to the league, to the league of items.
Pike on money, pike on money, pike on money. We making pike on money. Payday, about to throw a rack on China. Need some DFS advice, where can I find some? League of Items got the sheet with all the lineups and all the stacks that you need to get to diamond. League of Items!
Getting gold, that's the goal. Keep on winning on a roll. Kill 4 dragons, got soul. Now you got nowhere to go. Teleporting top to bot. Dive your carry on the spot. That's an ace. Wreck your base. Wear my crown. We on top.